Hi, so today, the truth about a narcissism diagnosis. Hi guys, so I had a video go viral on TikTok about narcissistic personality disorder, and an overwhelming amount of people on that post said, "You're a narcissist." This is the video. If I see one more post about my ex was a narcissist, I swear I'm going to jump out the window. It's a very good way to absolve yourself of any responsibility for a relationship failing. Even Laura wrote in her book, "Am I Married to a Narcissist?" Here's the chapter. So I thought I'd call in an expert. Tessa, whose IG and TikTok handle is SpiritNarc, to try and uncover some of this deep work and some of these deep-seated issues, because Tessa is a diagnosed narcissist. She has narcissistic personality disorder. We get into this and we get into other things in this conversation, and it's a wild ride because I was forced to look at a lot of things, and what I've realized is that autism presents like narcissism a lot of the time. And I heard this after the chapter was written about me possibly being a narcissist in Laura's book, and it was a relief. But still, I'm slightly uncomfortable realizing that. I'm slightly uncomfortable looking at that. This was a hard conversation. I kind of didn't want to put some of it out, but I never edit. This was the first time I was like, But that's my rule. I never edit unless a fire alarm or a smoke alarm goes off. So check it out. SpiritNarc. Tessa came into the Help with Stephen Hilton podcast. And like always, this episode is about normal people overcoming extraordinary circumstances. Whoops, I'm jumping back on to say that I forgot the most important bit. I realise now, after this conversation and after thinking about it, that I was probably wrong with my presumptions and my content there about narcissists, those couple of videos that I made. I love being wrong. I actually love it because it means that I've learned something. So I guess apologies to anyone who has been involved in narcissistic abuse. Do you call it narcissistic abuse? NPD abuse? Whatever it's called. For me, it was that the overuse of the word narcissist was, I just seen it everywhere on my TikTok, and everyone was just talking about how everyone's ex was a narcissist, and it was overwhelming, and I just thought, how can that be? But I see that it's quite easy that it could be. So anyway, enjoy the interview. Okay, this really is a new low for podcast professionalism, but don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Subscribe, because like 75% of people that watch my videos aren't subscribed. And I think it's because you don't realise what a huge deal it is for me. It really helps my videos and helps me be really happy. And really, I love watching that number go up. It makes me feel all warm inside. So, hit that thing down there, subscribe. And next to it, there's a lovely little bell. You might want to hit that too. If you like the video, leave a like. You know all this. Anyway, enjoy the video. I'm really excited. I'm really interested to talk about your journey and how did you get diagnosed? How did this all happen?
I was first diagnosed when I was still kind of like living with my parents a little bit, relying on them, and I was kind of out of the house. I was also doing drugs, and they were concerned. So they sent me to a therapist that suggested to me after a while that I had NPD.
Right.
And I didn't take it into account at all. Like, I didn't want to look at it. I was just like, whatever. I'm not facing that. And then, after that experience, like shortly after, I was still doing drugs, and I overdosed on marijuana, and I had like this massive drug trip that just upended everything for me. Yeah.
And you said, and you got diagnosed twice.
Yeah. The second one was actually just 3 months ago. Cause like, you never, as much as I've done like a lot of work on myself. You can't really, it's a disorder that you can't really just erase by becoming self-aware, but you can manage it. And
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work on that. But yeah, I still got a second diagnosis, like all the feelings, all the things I've been through, all the traumas. I just like repressed it and it all came out at once in
Yeah.
that drug experience. And it was intense.
Right.
Yeah.
What drug were you taking?
So the one that originally like caused the big realization was actually weed. But like I overdosed on edibles. Yeah. And I actually took like, since then I've done shrooms to kind of like actually heal that original experience. It's been
Right.
like, yeah, it's been a whole healing journey.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big drug addict. I'm in recovery, but I was like a serious drug addict to everything and a
Oh
big
man.
alcoholic. So I
Yeah.
understand I
Yeah.
understand addiction really well. And the only drug I didn't like was weed. It used to get me super paranoid.
Yeah, right. I know, like people don't talk about this enough, I feel like, because it's
Yeah.
like weed is something else. Like that paranoia was always a thing for me. And I think that if you do have like other mental health conditions, it's definitely like something you want to be careful with
Yeah,
because it like
definitely.
ups the likeliness of, yeah, experiencing something funky.
I know a friend of mine he had a latent, what is it? Schizophrenia, and THC pushed him over the edge. And yeah, he then
Yeah.
became like fully schizophrenic. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's serious. It's serious stuff for sure.
Yeah,
But,
people
like,
don't talk about that so much.
no, especially because it's legal now. You know, people are just like, smoke some weed. And I'm like, I did.
Right. Yeah,
It
yeah.
did not go the way that I wanted it to.
No. I had the same thing. It used to freak me out. I used to get paranoid and I never had a good time on it. Everything else I loved, but weed, no.
Yeah.
So I
You know,
totally get that. Yeah.
yeah, like it was interesting because like shrooms, which is, another psychedelic, was actually what healed me from like that original bad experience. And like,
Wow.
it's been proven to like, well, there's like studies in the works about it helping PTSD and stuff. And
Wow.
like for me, I think what it did was like allow me to feel my emotions for the first time. Cause like part of my mental health is like I repressed everything for my entire life. I didn't want to look at it. It was just like, don't talk about it, put it away. And then
Yeah.
like shrooms would bring that stuff to the surface. And it was the first time that I had to face that. And I felt some really difficult things. But once I was done feeling through it, I felt more healed.
Right. So
Yeah.
you went to therapy after this experience, and the therapist
Yeah.
suggested that you might have MPD.
Yeah. So the second time I was diagnosed was actually like 3 months ago. And I've done a lot of work on myself. And I think that like self-awareness doesn't like take away mental illness. I think it just makes you like aware of it so that you can learn to manage it,
Yeah.
which is like something I'm super passionate about because like honestly, mental illness has taken up my entire life. Like it took away my childhood, it took away like parts of college from me. And I'm just like, okay, like I want to live a life that I enjoy. How can I manage everything? Like what can I
Yeah.
do? And like I checked out your binaural beat stuff. That was so cool.
Oh,
I'm
great.
like
Yeah.
really into that. I love it.
There's
I
something
meditate like every night.
crazy. Oh,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It does something. I've got a therapist who's super into that, and I wanted to check it out with her, and she like co-signed it. She's like, yeah, you're onto something. So I'm just, yeah, it's definitely, it's interesting how it can calm, and you can actually use binaural beats to like influence any kind of mental state. You can do relaxation or like focus or energy. It's super interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And like honestly, I need that. Like
Yeah.
people don't talk about it, but like personality disorders like NPD and other things, like they often come with like anxiety,
Yeah.
depression, like all this stuff. Yeah.
Sure, sure.
It's cool.
So when you first got the diagnosis, were you shocked?
I don't think I really understood it. I mean, I was like, because like when you call someone a narcissist, it's such a buzzword.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, you're either saying I'm really confident and thank you, or
Right.
you're like saying I'm like, like self-absorbed. I didn't understand it was like this whole like pathology, like this
Right.
it is a mental illness, like it
Right.
counts as that. And yeah, like it starts really young in childhood where, you don't get something that you need early on, like maybe like nurturing or something like that.
Hmm.
There also might be a genetic component to it possibly, but it's like a mix of those two. And yeah, it's like this whole pathology that most people don't understand. And yeah, it's become such a buzzword. It's crazy.
Yeah, it feels like I see it
Everywhere
all
now.
the time, and people call everyone. It feels like it's misused, like it's almost like it diminishes people who really have it in a way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm right about this, but I thought I saw like someone called you a
Oh
narcissist.
yeah,
I'm like, they call anybody they don't like bad.
totally. I get it a lot because, well, a lot. I get it like I've had it like a few times in my life, and I think because I'm autistic, and I think there's this crossover.
Yeah.
Autistic can sometimes present as narcissistic, apparently. So
Yeah, I'm fascinated like
right.
by what you think about that.
Yeah, I think that I mean social I had to learn social cues and eye contact and you know being I had to kind of learn how to be interested in other people, to be honest. I
Yeah.
had to force myself to really learn that. And then when I was drinking, when I was in like the worst part of my addiction, I was like, I'm a sociopath. Like, I don't care about anyone or anything. I totally convinced myself that that's what I was. And when I stopped drinking, that went away. I was like, thank God, I've got empathy. But it's just, it didn't come naturally. Like, I think, when I was a kid, I didn't do eye contact. I hated my parents would make me play with kids, and I'd push them out the door. It was a real struggle. But I feel like I don't know how much of it I've learned or how much of it is like innate. But yeah, I get empathy is a struggle even now for me, to be honest.
Really? That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I relate.
Yeah.
But, like for me, it was like I have this theory that like people who end up developing personality disorders actually started out neurodivergent in some way, like when they were born, and they weren't accepted.
Right.
So like they got so repressed and they felt so in love that they were like, okay, I'm gonna just be somebody else now. And that's kind of where that like comes in, where you like edit yourself and you kind of lose your like you lose your grip on your authenticity or who you were meant to be because you're so busy trying to please other people. Yeah.
That's super interesting. No,
Yeah.
carry on. What were you saying?
I'm curious, like, how do you feel like it's hard to like feel? Is it like feeling empathy that is like a?
Well, it's a lot easier now. But when I was a kid, it wasn't so much empathy, actually. It was more like I just didn't like people. Like I couldn't.
That's relatable.
Yeah.
Most people are very difficult to deal with, I feel like. But yeah, like maybe do you think it was like you just like, didn't feel comfortable around people perhaps? So it was like, so I feel like there's also like a self-focused part. Like for me, a lot of the time, I'm so focused on my own feelings. I'm so focused on like how I'm going to present to people that I'm like, I can't like allow myself to relax enough to like even start to connect to other people.
Yeah, I totally get that. I totally get that. Yeah, it's almost like, and it's exhausting being around. If I go to a social thing, it's like when I come back, like this, the amount of work I have to put in is like, it's exhausting. But yeah, so now NPD that's narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah.
And what is that defined as, like clinically? What is that?
So it's a personality disorder in the cluster B spectrum. And then you have like other people like borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and then histrionic. People don't know a lot about that, but it's this cluster B. It's like the dramatic, erratic cluster. That's literally like the keywords they use. And they're not wrong. I mean,
okay, yeah.
There's a lot of fiery people in that cluster, but all of these disorders, I think, are actually like, there's a theory that it's like CPTSD presenting as different disorders. So like, depending on the trauma, depending on the person, they'll come out with a different personality disorder, but really it's all like repressed trauma and then defenses to protect that person. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. So you might develop a personality disorder as a defense almost against.
For sure. It's like at a certain point in your life, like you've just been through too much. And with me, like for NPD, it's like you shut off your emotions at a certain point. You're like, I've been hurt too much. I'm done. Right. And then like because I went through so much, I was just not willing to put my heart out as much anymore. Sure. And over the years, I was just like, I grew very, very defensive. Right. And I'm just starting to like unlearn that stuff, because really what you find is you get really lonely. because like you
Right.
can't connect to anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And that can lead to
Yeah.
depression and isolation. And
Oh my God, yes. Depression
yeah,
is so common with this stuff.
yeah, I totally
Yeah.
get that, because we are meant to, like, when I go to 12-step meetings and everyone's like, the connection is so important and everyone's sort of connected. And I still can't quite do it. Like I
Oh.
try, but this doesn't
Yeah.
come naturally. So I definitely, so when you said, was there a specific thing that you think was traumatic enough to send you down this road?
I think it's a lot of different things, and that's the CPTSD aspect of it. Like,
Right.
it wasn't just one event, but I think the
Sure.
main thing it was like I experienced, unfortunately, like a lot of humiliating experiences very young, or very traumatic experiences. And then when I would come home to like what was supposed to be a loving household, there was just like misunderstanding. There was like coldness. There wasn't a lot of discussion about feelings. So I was like left to process it on my own, which is
Right.
you can't as a kid. So like it just became to the point where I just felt like I only could rely on myself. And I
Right.
was just like, I can't depend on other people because like my parents aren't going to be there, my friends, like nobody. And
Right.
then, yeah, I think it was honestly going through trauma and then also not being able to process it, feeling utterly alone with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. So do you have that, were you bullied at school?
That's so hard for me to talk about. I'm at
Right.
the point where I'm like, I separate myself from
Mm.
that person, like
Sure,
that
sure.
child that I was. But
Totally.
yeah, there was a lot of difficult things that happened. And
Sure.
I do think I had some sort of neurodivergence for sure, like my child self. And
Right.
I was just left alone with it. And like, it got to the point where I really like hated the mind and the body that I lived in. And at that point, like I just felt like I had to become somebody else, like to be loved, to be like perfect, and that's
Right.
like how the whole thing started. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of like lack of acceptance at school and at home, just
Sure.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I totally get that. I mean,
Yeah.
and altering yourself to be loved is, yeah, that's a big one as well, which is masking in a way, isn't it? You're
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. Like I've always found that fascinating because like do you feel like you have to do that with like your
Yeah,
nerve?
if I'm in a big social situation, I do. I really do. Like
Yeah, it's
one to
like,
one is easier. Like this
yeah.
connection for me is totally fine, and this is like I'm feeling like connected. But if
Yeah.
it's more than one person,
And it's kind of like
yeah, it's hard. It's hard, and I can feel myself. So that's interesting when you said you sort of detached yourself from your child self in order
yeah, for
to.
sure.
That's an interesting thing because, yeah, I definitely had a traumatic childhood in terms of like just there wasn't a specific thing, but like someone told me recently that like if you have lots of small traumas are very similar to one big one.
Yeah.
They can add up to even more,
Yeah.
So that was the case for me. There wasn't a specific thing, but I
It was just like a
really,
lot.
yeah, I didn't get on with my parents, and I was felt like you, like totally like different.
Alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
alone and different, and struggled to connect. So that made me depressed. You know,
How do you feel like you process through that to like get to where you are now? Or like, do you feel like it still affects you in a lot of ways? Or
it does. I mean,
yeah.
luckily for me, the thing you get with autism, I think most people get. I mean, I definitely experienced it. Was the special interest side, which I was able to just. I devoted my whole life. I spent my whole life in music, and that was my escape. So I didn't do anything else, and luckily, that became my career. And because I think I had the special interest, I became like really like. I was doing really interesting stuff. Like I discovered music when I was 13, and by 15 I had a record deal. And then I was like scoring movies in my early 20s, and that's all because of special interest. So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, so what neurodivergence took away from me with connecting, it gave me in terms of special interest. So
Yeah. I mean, I relate to that so much. Like I love music. I also make music on my own.
you do?
Time.
Oh
Yeah,
yes, you said yeah.
Yeah. I started doing that when I was around 13 too. I had like GarageBand and I would
Yes.
like, tinker around in it. And I, it wasn't anything like good or anything, but I got this sound engineering teacher when I was around like 15, and he taught me until like 17 or 18. And I learned all the ins and outs of like mixing and mastering.
Wow.
And now I just like create songs.
That's
And that's like,
do you release them?
that's my
Good.
perfectionism. I should. I really
Yeah.
should. I think I did something with like Condé Nast or something where they filmed me doing my music, but there's always
Right.
been this thing where I'm like, it's not good enough yet. Like it's not
Yeah.
perfect enough. That is hard.
It is hard. Getting over the perfectionism is hard. I wonder if that's a neurodivergent thing, or I wonder if that's an everyone thing.
It could also be a trauma thing too, because like you're so used to people being like, whether your parents or someone else, it's like, that's not good enough, do better. Like that was my parents.
Right.
Nothing was ever enough for them. And then
Sure.
it's still like that voice in my head. It's like,
Right. How is your relationship with them now? Are you still in contact? Or?
I am. It's been interesting. Honestly, I feel like for the first time, I'm trying to like accept how it is with them and see what relationship I can build now, because like they're always going to be who they are.
Sure.
And they're still kind of really closed off in a lot of ways, but I just want, like, I don't want them to like pass on, and like I haven't like formed some sort of connection with them, if that makes sense. So like I'm trying to like see what can happen. And I was really mad for a long time until I realized that like this is a deeper problem than just like them being shitty parents or whatever. They tried, and they also have trauma too. So it was like this generational thing. And once I learned what they went through, I was like, oh my God, it's like been this thing passing through my family, like for generations, like bad parents, and then like raising kids that are hurt, which also like raise their kids, in a way they shouldn't. And so I decided one day, I was like, I'm going to break this cycle. Like it stops with me. If I have kids, I'm not going to pass any of it on to them, like all the stuff that my family has been through.
Yeah. So does MPD run in your family?
Possibly. I think my mom's dad might have been. I mean, he never got diagnosed, but he was pretty unself-aware and pretty narcissistic for sure.
So if you had to sort of break down narcissism into like really basic blocks, what would you say the main symptoms are, not in narcissistic personality disorder?
I would say that like one of the main symptoms that everyone talks about is like the grandiosity, which is like, you can also find it in bipolar, but it's like, for me, it was like, I got to the point where I was really bitter, because of so many people hurting me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to like perfect myself. I'm going to be someone that everyone loves. And then I was also like, it made me feel better for a long time to like be better than other people. Like I wanted to be the best. I wanted to feel on top for once. That was like, it's all like something that stems from trauma in a way,
Right.
And that mentality also makes it hard to connect to people. So it's difficult, but like, that's one aspect of it. I think like another one is really, you just don't really know who you are deep down, because you've spent so long like repressing all of that and building like this outside self that people will really like, like all the flashy stuff, like, oh, I'm a sound engineer, or like, oh, I do this, like, or that.
Right.
But when you start feeling at a certain point, like just very like empty, and like, you don't have like a lot of inside stuff going on. Like I lost interest in like all hobbies except like gaining like fame or like getting followers or whatever. And you just become like very detached from almost everything, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so there's also, go ahead.
Carry on.
I was going to say like the last one that I find like really important is like, honestly, you can like have these fluctuations between feeling like really good about yourself and then like crashing.
Yes.
It's depressive. It's like hell on earth, honestly. And it's always triggered by something. Because like when you base your worth on like only outside stuff, when you're like, okay, my worth, let's say, is like about my following, how many followers I have, you're going to see an account with more.
Sure.
And that could like send you into like feeling like, oh my God, I'm utterly insignificant. I'm
Yeah,
nothing. I'll
not
never
good
be
enough.
anything. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It is the worst thing about this.
That was interesting when you said there about chasing followers and fame and stuff. So how did that manifest itself?
Um, I think I just felt like if I become famous, or if I have lots of followers watching my every move, I will finally feel seen. And
Right.
like my main trauma, honestly, is like not feeling noticed
Not
ever.
feeling seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So it's almost like a way to fill in that hole. But what sucks, and like I've learned this through like psychedelics and stuff, it's like it's never gonna fill that. It's a temporary thing. Like, sure, you can feel good for a little while, like putting out something or getting validation for something, but it never really like actually makes you feel good permanently. Yeah.
Doesn't. No, it's true. And it's that they say that you're trying to fill like a hole in the soul with that stuff, and it's
Yeah.
never enough. Like it's never enough. Like I know a friend of mine is like really famous guy, and he's like, I still don't feel like famous if I go into a room and then there's like Justin Bieber's there.
Oh
Then
my
I
God.
feel
It never ends.
so it
Yeah.
never stops. It feels like it never ever stops. Then no matter.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you buy something, like if you're obsessed about buying something and then you get it and then you feel good for a day and then it's just like
Oh
doesn't
my
make.
God. Yeah. And I feel like it sucks because like so much of the world is like that right now. I feel like society itself is just like reflecting that right now. I mean, every young person's obsessed with like getting fame.
Yeah.
They think it's gonna make them happy. Like, um, it's something that like I mean, like I want to go into psychology, and like someday I want to, I guess, like put out another narrative there. Like, one that talks about like your happiest life is something lived like, first of all, true to yourself, and also like not like trapped within all these like mental, I mean, like, how do I say, like
I get it.
yeah,
Yeah. Not you mean
like
not
these
not
like these constructs that like people set, like put out there,
yes.
like, like this is how society says like emotion is weak to show, but we
Yeah.
need to actually, like sharing about your mental health is
Yeah.
weak, but it's anything but that. Like I didn't start feeling way better until I found a community of people that I could like
Yeah.
talk to
Right.
about it. Like, yeah, we don't need to be silent on this stuff. Like we need to talk more about it, if anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a strong a community of MPD people that
There
you?
is a little bit. I mean, it's kind of a rare diagnosis, so there's not like tons of people, but there's this cluster B community, and it's been the best thing I've ever seen. Like honestly, like it makes me feel so much less alone, and like feeling less alone has like helped me like accept so much, because like you're like, oh, these other people are going through this too, and
Yeah.
you feel hope, and it's just
Yeah.
awesome.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, what did your parents, how did they react to the diagnosis?
I never told them.
Oh, wow.
I never told
Interesting.
them. I think they have like their own suspicions about stuff, but I am not. Emotions were never comfortable to discuss, or like
Okay.
anything like personal was just not discussed in my family, and it still kind of is that way. Like they just don't
Wow.
talk about the shit they're going through. And
Right.
like, yeah, like I just went to their house, like I think yesterday, and the atmosphere hasn't changed. It's fascinating to watch because like I've broken out of that.
Sure.
I used to be like trapped in that mentality too, but like now I go over there and I'm like, oh my God, like only surface level stuff is talked about in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
Do they not see your content though?
No.
Oh,
I actually went
wow.
as I went as far as to block them, honestly. Like I blocked them on my Instagram, and it's sad. Like maybe someday if like I'm more comfortable or like
Sure.
something happens, I'll like let them know. But
Wow.
I'm
So
kind of trying to, yeah.
this is a whole thing they don't know. That's fascinating that they're not aware of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just something that like I feel more comfortable with right now. Cause like I'm trying to like find who I am
Sure.
besides that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you struggle with empathy, would you say?
Yeah, I think I do. I think like it's not just like me struggling to like feel for other people. It's like it's hard for me to like see like, I'll see somebody and it's like my brain immediately goes to like, oh, what role are they going to play in my life? Like, how are they going to add to like the show that is my life? And it's so hard for me for some reason to just look at a person and be like, that person has their own backstory. They have their own thoughts. They have their own like cognitions. I don't know if it's like a safety thing. Like maybe if I don't think about it, that person can hurt me less. But yeah, isn't that like crazy?
Yeah, no, I identify with that. I totally,
Really?
I do identify with that. Like,
Really?
yeah, I do. I mean,
That's
yeah,
fast.
there is a sense of, yeah, like when you said that, what would they add to the show that is my life?
Yeah.
I totally,
Yeah, it's like keeping them at arm's length in a way, or just like, yeah, it's like connecting, but like indirectly.
yeah, that's so interesting because, I find connecting with people. My therapist said that the way that I don't really connect in real life. I talk on in my content, and she's like, it's good that
Yeah.
you're processing a lot of stuff like this, but it's also you're keeping everyone at arm's length. Like you're not
Yes.
allowing people to
Yeah. Cause
answer
like,
back.
yeah, because like when you're going live and stuff and you're
Yeah,
talking to people, it's like it's like a connection in a way. Like they're all talking to you, they're giving you their
yeah,
thoughts, they're like supporting you, but it's
yeah.
just a bunch of followers and numbers and stuff. And I've gotten to know some of my followers more personally and like I adore them. And like I'm
Well,
trying to branch out with that, but like it is like keeping them at a distance because like
yeah,
they can support you without knowing too much. They can support you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing that she said that really stuck with me is that they can't talk back. So you can just say whatever and there's no pushback. So it's
Yeah.
kind of perfect for people who are a bit self-obsessed.
In a
Yes.
way, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder, there's this thing. Have you ever heard of like attachment styles before?
No, what's that?
There's like avoidant attachment, like anxious attachment, and secure attachment.
Okay.
And it just like kind of describes how you relate to people. Avoidant attachment is that keeping people at arm's length type of
Okay.
thing. I
Right.
was just curious if you like related to that. Like,
Right. No, I have to look into that. I don't know.
yeah, you should
So
probably like it's
what
cool.
would you be?
Avoidant.
Avoidant.
For
Okay.
sure. It's like there's like avoidant dismissive, avoidant fearful, and yeah, like there's these little quizzes you can take online and it can tell you a lot about yourself. Obviously, like
Wow.
with a grain of salt because it's an online quiz, but
What's it called again?
attachment styles.
Attachment styles. Okay.
Yeah.
Now look, I'll check that out.
Avoidant is like you like people sometimes, well, like there's anxious attachment where it's like you want people, you open up to people and get really close, but then you get super uncomfortable or scared and push them away really quick. Avoidant is just like consistently keeping someone at arm's length, like relying mostly on yourself to solve problems. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Right. I would say avoidant then. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And like when someone gets too close to you, you feel like you have to like maybe go the opposite way.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Even though you may want them to be close to you, it's like when it's actually happening, you might feel like claustrophobic or just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but how do you find it? Do you find it's a problem in relationships? Has it been a big problem for you?
I think
Yeah.
it's been something that definitely like doesn't allow for like a certain level of closeness. And like when you don't have that, because I also like have a hard time trusting people.
Right.
Without trust in a relationship, it's difficult. Like, and when you're constantly like keeping someone at arm's length, they're never going to really truly know you, I guess. And like,
Yeah.
there's only a certain level of intimacy you can reach with someone at that point. So
Yeah.
it's definitely something I've been working on because like, I just got tired of being so bored. Like I wouldn't feel anything. I would just be like, and I realized that emotions are like the lifeblood of like existence. It makes things interesting,
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say you work on it, what treatment is there? Treatment available? What do you do to work on it?
Yeah, there's so assuming that like personality disorders and a lot of this trauma stuff is CPTSD. CPTSD is treated by EMDR, which I just started doing.
Oh yeah.
That's intense. You
Really
go
is.
back into those memories, but what it does is like once you're through it, you feel like a light like a lightness to yourself, like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders.
Yeah.
And like for me, like for example, I went into an EMDR session and I focused on like a really humiliating memory from childhood.
Yeah. Sure.
And it was something that still affected me, because like every time I would go live with somebody, I would be excited and everything, but there was this little thing that was like, you're going to be humiliated, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And I used to react to it with like, well, I'm just better than all these people. And that's the defense mechanism. You're like, well, if I'm better than everyone, then it's all their fault if something goes wrong. Right. And it's like, yeah, you really dig into it. And it's like the core of it is like some sort of like discomfort or trauma or fear or something. And yeah, doing EMDR actually like lifted a lot of that anxiety, like stress and fear.
It's incredible, EMDR.
Yeah,
It's right. It's funny how your brain knows what's going on. You just have to let it sort of tell you almost. There's like I believe that every person has a natural ability to heal. It's about like harnessing it in a way, like figuring out how to like promote that inside yourself. Cause like the mind is capable of amazing things, you know? Sure, definitely. Yeah. So it was interesting when you said when you went live with people, you didn't want to bring people in. I can't do it. I'm convinced this exactly what you're saying. I'm convinced someone's going to say something really horrible. I'm just convinced. And I can't get over it. I just can't do it.
Is it bringing someone in to like go live with you?
Yeah.
As well.
Can't do it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's almost like the opposite for me in a way, but I relate. It's like, to me, the commenters, people can be hateful. Like,
yes. Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to see that. Like, I'm busy healing, you know, like I don't need that.
Yeah.
Like that only vibes, but yeah.
Yeah. I feel like being, narcissistic or even autism in a way, which for me does make me less, I would say, it's easier for me to cope with a hate comment than perhaps my ex Laura. She if she has a hate comment, it destroys her for the entire day. And if I get one, it hurts, but you can brush it off more. I think. Could you find that you with the NPD can be a defense sometimes?
Yes, for sure. And you know, I do this thing still. I still do it where I like devalue the other person, and I'm like, they're just jealous. They're just envious. Like, God, they wish they could do half of what I do. They wish they could have half the strength I do. It's like, it gets very, you know, and like that protects me. Or, you know, like I'll show like the hate to my followers and they'll jump to my defense.
Yes. I do that too. Yeah. That's bad, because then you get a buzz from it, and then it's bad. I do that sometimes, but I don't think it's bad necessarily. I think it's just a way of like coping with it, because people, you know, and I'm learning on a deeper level too, that these hateful people are just triggered in some way. Like it's all about them. And that's like even lessened my need to even be so defensive. Because I used to get really angry. I would say like hateful stuff back. Right.
But now I'm just like, you know, I'm understanding that like a lot of times people are watching my content and they've had like an ex that's super narcissistic and has hurt them. And they see me like either having a platform and they don't think I should, or like they see me saying something that triggers old memories or something like that. And they feel, a lot of people aren't very aware of their own emotions. So like they won't stop and think about the trigger. They'll just have a reaction of hate. They'll be like, this person sucks. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
But it's their own discomfort. It's their own like wounds.
Yeah. That makes sense. That really does make sense.
Yeah.
I wanted to, you posted, I was looking at your Instagram today and you posted something really interesting. And I wanted to ask you about it. What is this?
Sure.
The symptoms of NPD that people don't talk about. I thought this was super interesting. Because people, I would assume, think that NPD people are always grandiose, but you've got here the self-esteem fluctuation. So does it?
Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, I think that somebody with NPD that's unself-aware is probably not ever going to show somebody that, but they go through it internally if they actually have the disorder. Because like there's a level of suffering needed. Like some people are just narcissistic and they're not actual, like they don't have the disorder, and they may have less of that, but the pathology is definitely like internally, you know. And I just think that like I think like almost like the definition that people put out there of NPD is like almost just wrong at this point. It's just like,
Right.
it's like, it's like they're like listing criteria for like assholes. It's just like, oh, you're like,
Right.
it doesn't say anything about like,
Yeah,
well,
that's
yeah.
a good point. Yeah, I do feel like that. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people wouldn't assume that a narcissist would have low self-esteem, but it makes sense.
Yeah. And I almost think like even deeper than that, because like I can't accept I have low self-esteem. That's like, it still feels like
Right.
an insult to think about myself. I just think like, I tell myself like that's my trauma. Like that's like
Right.
this stuff bringing me down to like a lower vibration and I don't want to let it. So I try to like logic myself out of it now. Because it happens with every person with NPD. They'll just hide it from you because of that avoidant attachment. They won't show you the emotional side because it's weak, right?
Weakness, right? Okay, so it's important for an MPD person to show a front of strength.
So
Okay,
much. Yeah. And
really,
like I think like I've been trying to deal with it by like rationalizing it, if that makes sense. Like I'll get those really dark thoughts and then I'm like, okay, like this is just my disorder or like this is just my trauma or whatever. It says nothing about me. It says nothing about my worth.
right?
It says nothing about who I really am underneath all this. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's been a process.
Wow, that's super interesting. There were a few things here that I thought. Yeah, depression and anxiety. Another thing you wouldn't necessarily,
Yeah.
assume with a.
I've
Uh,
never met someone with NPD that doesn't have depression or anxiety.
really, right? Yeah,
Yeah, and there's levels of like being good at hiding it, I guess. Like,
yeah.
I
I
mean,
do feel like narcissistic people that have this are demonized, especially right now on
yeah,
TikTok and stuff.
I think that the
Yeah.
world just like simultaneously somehow came to the conclusion that like every bad toxic behavior should just be dumped on this diagnosis. And
Yes.
I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
I
yeah.
totally agree with you.
Yeah, and like that's probably why they're up in your comments section. Like if
Yeah.
they see something that you are doing that
Oh,
they
yeah.
think is like bad, they'll be like, "Oh, well, he's a narcissist." But of
Yeah.
course, like they're
Totally.
just yeah,
That's so interesting. Like when you said before, like it's actually a list of character traits that make you an asshole that people think is
right.
NP. That's so true.
And
It's
it's not
so
like
true.
yeah, and
Yeah.
narcissists can be assholes, but like so can anyone. That's the
Everyone.
thing.
Yeah.
Everyone has the capability, no matter what your diagnosis is. Like I
Yeah.
had a few exes that were also abusive and
Right.
like none of them had NPD. One didn't even have a single diagnosis. He was just a jerk, like
Right.
abusive.
Yeah. And I feel like people diagnose abusive people as narcissists when it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. It's
Killing
super.
off yourself at a early age. Can you talk about that? What's that all about?
That was like I kind of talked about it a little bit, but it's really,
Oh,
it's when like I think I just like my child self grew to like hate everything about themselves because like everyone else was always saying bad things. So yes, there was a point, I think it was around like 15, where I was finally just done and I was like, okay, I'm going to be anybody but me. And I started like, I would watch other people who I thought were like charming or like charismatic or calm or collected or whatever. And I'd like take traits from them. I was basically like just trying to be like other people at that point. I was like, what can I take from these people to like add to myself to become somebody I can be proud of?
wow,
And it was like,
I get that.
it was
Yeah.
intense. It was like an interesting part of my life.
Wow. So you kind of broke yourself down at 15 and then started to rebuild yourself with other people's character traits.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I feel like I can identify with that.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
I'm fascinated.
definitely.
You want to go into that a little?
Yeah, no, I've definitely done that. I found like if I found someone that I would like think they were really cool or whatever, I would like absorb bits of them. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think that honestly, everyone does it to some extent because we want to be like the people we admire. But I think that what makes it a disorder at a certain point is because like I suspect that I never got the chance because of like trauma really early on. I'm talking like 4 years old and under.
Right.
I didn't get the chance to even know who that person was going to be. Like my sense of self, like my actual authentic self didn't grow normally. Like I didn't really develop a whole sense of self in the first place. So by the time I was like taking traits from other people, it was just like to cover up like an emptiness, if anything.
Interesting. That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
I know. It's like, and like a lot of my work has been like rediscovering, like self-discovery for the first time. Like I'm going inside and I'm like, okay, when I'm alone by myself, what do I like to do? What do I want to do with like, what makes me happy, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And how do you discover that?
Um, it's been a process. I think like the first step was to like even like let myself feel again,
Okay.
because like emotions will guide you to that. And then like, you know, once I allowed myself to like feel things, I was like, okay, what makes me feel stronger than other things? And I noticed that like, you know, at first when I went on social media, I just wanted followers, but I started helping them in my DMs. I started like helping them work through their own problems and relationships. And I developed like a passion for like a genuine passion for fixing, like, I almost want to say like helping people, but it's more than that. It's like people are puzzles, right? They're so interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got this passion for like putting the pieces back together, like helping people do that. Yeah.
So you said, admittedly yourself there, that you went on for followers and fame, and you ended up,
it ended up being more. It was the coolest thing ever. And like,
so did that sort of inform what you liked to do when you realized that you were helping people in this way?
Yeah, because like for the first time in my life, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to go to college finally for psychology. And I'm like starting that again. Like before, I was just going to college and I tried like everything, but nothing really stuck. I would do like all these different things, like, you know, filmmaking and like, you know, art and like, you know, this and that. And nothing ever really like made me feel passionate. But I can finally be like, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. And that's like such a good feeling.
Wow, that's great. And it's something that people wouldn't associate with a person with narcissism. How do you say this? A person with NPD, narcissist?
Yeah,
what's the correct term?
Well, I mean, technically, yeah, you could say a person with NPD or just a narcissist. I mean, it's just so hard because like that does not mean anything anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a lot of my followers that get angry and they come online and they're like, if you say the word narcissist, you mean someone with NPD, point blank period. But no one listens to that, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Someone wouldn't associate a narcissist with having a passion for helping people. That totally goes against the stereotype.
Yeah, I think it's complicated for me because like I am still struggling with like the like in feeling individually for people part, but it's more like in a logical sense, it's so rewarding to like help people perfect themselves, to help people reach that higher vibration where they're not weighed down by like mental illness and like stress and like anxiety, or like they can't see their way out of a bad relationship and I can like give them pointers and stuff. It's more like, in a logical sense, at least right now, it's so rewarding.
Yeah. I found it interesting when you said people are like puzzles. I thought that was really interesting. That's like, I identify with that, but that's quite it's almost a detached way of looking at a person as a puzzle. And I get that. I do get that. I think that's something, another crossover with autism. There's definitely a big crossover between autism and for me anyway, autism and a lot of things you're saying. I'm like, I totally identify with that.
That's so fascinating to me. I wonder if it's like, like maybe it's a mix of like the fact that, you know, like the autism and the trauma, because like we had childhood trauma. Yeah. So like, I don't know. Like, I'm curious, what do you feel like you deal with the most nowadays that's just like hard for you?
With being autistic?
Like, or with just your mental health in general, I guess. Yeah.
I would say social interaction in real life is a big problem for me because I'm in 12-step groups. I do therapy. I do EMDR. I even had my first ever medium tarot psychic reading. And everyone said the same thing. You need to connect with people more. Everyone said the same thing. I'm like, what?
And you're like, come on. I didn't want to hear.
It's crazy. So it's obviously a problem.
Well, I'm curious if you feel like it's mostly just like the logistics of like, going out and connecting to people, like, what do you do? What do you say? Or like this, or is there some like bit of it that's also like from trauma where you're like, where you expect something bad to happen, I guess, or like expect to be misunderstood?
I think it's both. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's definitely an element of both of that. I mean, like I was saying before, I feel like I had to learn eye contact. I had to learn
Yeah.
to be. I was interested in people, but I would keep them so far distant. Even as a kid, I remember this, and then having to learn how to interact and almost learn how to feel empathy. It was a process.
Yeah.
Are you an only child, by the way?
No, I had two younger brothers. They're on their own journeys, but we all got affected by the environment we were raised in my opinion. Like I see him, my brother he doesn't go out anywhere. He just plays video games all day. He's kind of like dealing with it in a different way. But yeah, like, I mean, I feel like I kind of relate to what you're saying in a way, because like I feel this pressure to like perform perfectly every time I go out. And it has stopped me sometimes from like going out. I'm like, I won't go out if I know that like there's a chance that like I'm too depressed to like make good jokes or like something or like whatever. I'm like, no, I have to be on my A game or something.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to relax because like I'm constantly like calculating everything I do.
Right.
Because I don't want to be imperfect. That's my thing. So like, but still like the calculations constantly makes it hard to like just relax and enjoy myself.
So when you're out, you feel like you're constantly calculating situations and
how to come across perfectly, how to like wow people, how to like, it never stops in my head.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so interesting. I get that. And and that I really relate to the I'm going to take away the how do people add to the show of my life. I totally relate to that.
Oh man, that's a feeling. Yeah, it's it's intense.
Yeah.
Well, like, go ahead.
Do your brothers have any diagnoses that are related to NPD?
I don't know because like I don't talk to them very much, but they're also so like, they're still so closed off that they don't even want to like, they think it's probably weak to go to therapy. I'm guessing they were where I was like 2 years ago before I was self-aware. I was like, emotions are, people who are emotional are pathetic. Like people who want to go to therapy are weak. Clearly not. Like that's not the truth at all. But that mentality was trained into me by like my environment and my parents and so they're still in that. I don't think they will ever probably go to therapy unless something bad happens in their life, like mine, where you're suffering so much that you want to like, that you need to feel better in any way,
Sure. So you say 2 years ago, you were at a worse point with NPD than you are.
Oh God. Yeah. Like before I had like really, it was just the fact that like the drugs that I did eventually just knocked all my defenses away at once. And I had to face all that inner shit at once. And I was just suffering a lot. And I was like, okay, I'll go to therapy. Cause I'm like, honestly, I was suicidal for a bit. It was intense. It got pretty bad because I just couldn't handle all of that stuff. And I was like, I'll do anything to feel better.
Yeah. So were you doing drugs to mask? I imagine drugs sort of supercharge narcissism for me.
Yes, definitely. They do.
Yeah, right.
I did them too. Yeah, I definitely, part of it was just like repression because my parents constantly said drugs are so bad. Like never let me obviously like try anything, or like they just talked it down so much that once I moved out, I was like, I can drink, like I can smoke. I was like, cool. Yeah. and I found that it would put me in states that would also let me run away from it. Yeah.
Did you ever do like drugs like the uppers, like cocaine or amphetamine or anything like that?
I think I'm staying away from that stuff.
Because I mean I think for neurodivergent people, I think that they're the worst for me anyway. I don't do them anymore, but I'm just looking at your thing here because there was so much interesting stuff there.
Thank you. But like, I mean, I've only done shrooms as like shrooms is a hard drug, I guess, but that's as far as I'm going to go.
Right, right. Oh yeah, delusions and distortions. Could you talk about your experience with that?
Oh my God. So that's the stuff where like the most common one for NPD is like you think everyone's insulting you. I mean, you're so like hyper aware for insults or something challenging your ego that you will like hyper scan the room for anything that could be like rude or insulting or whatever. And like God, how do I even explain how that affects your life? I mean, like most of my fights when I was like unself-aware was just me like attacking somebody when I thought they were attacking me, but they were never attacking me in the first place.
Okay.
And it was just, like I would get enraged and I would like get super mad. I would say like hurtful things because I thought that they were insulting me in some way, but they weren't. Like, there was this situation where I was dating somebody with ADHD, and his dad had ADHD, and his dad said goodbye to, him, but walked out without saying goodbye to me. And I was ready to like be like, I was so insulted that I didn't consider the fact he just has ADHD and he's forgetful. I thought it was a personal slight. And I was like, I don't even want to be part of your family anyways. Like, I knew they never liked me, like, this and that. And like, I went way too far with it. And nothing would happen. Nothing. Like,
so that
example.
It's a delusional. So in your head, it's a different thing than in reality.
Yeah. And there's like no consideration that it might be something else. Maybe it's not about me. He just has ADHD. He forgets everything. So like, yeah. And then like, there's other ones where like, I'm not sure if this counts as a delusion, but like thinking emotions are weak. All emotionality is weak.
Yeah.
It's like it's a cognitive way of looking at the world that's so incorrect. And it makes relationships very hard because if you think emotionality is weak or like, like, I don't know, that's a hard one to explain, but it's like, I used to, you just can't connect to anyone through that,
Right.
Yeah.
I saw something as well. You were talking about the feeling that you're better than everyone else. Could you talk about that?
Oh no. I'm gonna get so much hate.
super fascinating. And I totally see how that's a defense mechanism. I totally see it.
Because if you're better than everyone else, number one, like you're special. And I've always wanted to be special. I've always wanted to mean something to the world. And like in my head, if you don't stand out, then you're nothing at all. If you're average, then you're just one of millions. And like that thought stressed me out so much. So that's like the first part of it. And then like, it's also, like if you feel like you are always right, you're always better, you can't possibly be at fault for anything that goes wrong. And then that protects you from like, having to feel bad if you mess something up, maybe like in a relationship. It's like, well, no, that was the other person's fault.
Right.
Or like, oh, they just weren't good enough for me. Or like,
Totally.
But what it does is like, it also can destroy relationships on the other side of it. Because like, if you don't see that you're causing people harm or like you feel justified in it or like whatever, you'll never take a look at it. And then the same thing will continue because it really is you.
Right. Yeah.
It is you. And I don't blame myself still. I'm like, I didn't ask to have this disorder. So I'm just trying to like find out when it's making me think in a way that's harmful or when it's suggesting that like I do something that's harmful to myself or like to a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good that you've become the journey to self-awareness is what do you think were the main things that have helped you become self-aware?
I think it was realizing that, I like NPD is actually like hurting me sometimes. Sometimes it makes me feel really good. And other times it's the cause of the torment in my head. And I was just like, okay, how can I manage that? Like, how can I not let that bring me down? It was the part where like I realized that it had taken away my ability to create music because I wasn't allowing myself to feel anything or like connect to my inner self. And so it was cut off, like no spontaneousness, no authenticity, nothing and like I couldn't write a song.
Wow.
It's just like if you let it will suck the life out of you. And like I think it's true of a lot of mental illnesses, to be honest. Like if you let them run rampant in your life, it'll destroy your life, you know?
Yeah.
So now I'm just like, how can I live the life that I deserve? How can I manage my symptoms? Like you have to see it as a disorder first. And a lot of people never get there. They don't think anything's wrong.
Sure. Yeah, I heard that one of the biggest thing with narcissists is they don't think there's anything wrong to get therapy for, and that's one of the biggest problems. That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's like part of the delusions, because you know, like it's the I'm always right thing. If you're always right, then it's the world that's wronged you. It's the people in your life that must change, and like, you know, like it's the people around you that are making you unhappy. Like there's no chance that in your head you're gonna come to the conclusion that like somehow the way you're living is making you unhappy.
Right.
Yeah.
I think what you're doing, which is really interesting and really powerful, is like I was saying before, like I think a lot of people demonize narcissists. You're a bad person. It's just a very reductionist, like you're bad, you're a horrible person.
Yeah, like...
you're adding like a human, you're showing the human side and the relatable side where, you know, it is, you struggle, you know, it's a struggle. It's not like you're just this grandiose, arrogant person. Like it's not that at all.
No. Yeah, and like that's why I find like this whole conversation with you so awesome, because like you relate to me in some ways too, and that's just like that's awesome. Like it shows so much more. Yeah,
it's really I mean I've related to a lot in this conversation, and it's really I do think that the conversation perhaps needs to, people are very reductionist with the narcissist, and it's just all bad. But you know, there's and also like a lot of people with narcissistic personality disorder do incredible things in this world as well.
Yeah, there's that, like that ego will get you places.
It's true. I mean, it's I mean, there's lots of like business leaders that people think are not, like Elon Musk and people like that. I mean,
I mean, I don't know if they're narcissists or not, but definitely narcissistic, and that can be a pushing trait for sure. And it's awesome, really, that people are speaking out about this, and it's not just me either. It's like, have you seen? He's a really good friend of mine, The Nameless Narcissist. He's got like he's like a really good friend, and he also has NPD. And we do a lot of stuff together. So that people can see like there's numbers to this. There's people that can create a safe space. You can come and like understand yourself and heal, and you don't have to see all the bullshit, frankly, online. And he's done incredible things too with it. So,
is there medication that helps?
I think so, but for like outside symptoms, like I'm on Wellbutrin right now, which is for like depression and anxiety, and it's actually helped me a lot.
Oh, it has. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. So so do you do therapy as well? Do you talk therapy?
Right now I'm just doing EMDR, but in the past I have, and that honestly hasn't been too helpful for me. It's really the EMDR and like digging into the past traumas and releasing them that I've found like the most helpful. I find with talk therapy, and I think it might be a neurodivergent thing. I find the talk therapy is really it's really hard, because I don't want to just, and I find it, if I'm being honest, I find it hard not to lie to the therapist, just to make stuff up. That's so relatable.
Just like, this is boring. I'm going to just make this a little bit more dramatic.
Oh, I know. And they always have like those soft voices. They're like, what would you like to tell me today? And I'm like,
true. It's
it's so hard.
But EMDR is no joke. That's
that's been life-changing for me.
Me too. I've only probably done about 10 sessions, but geez, it's life-changing.
It really is. And like, I actually have come up with a theory too with it a little bit. Cause like, I think if you go too fast with the EMDR, like when you've grown up being traumatized and like your identity is almost based off of your trauma. Once you take all that trauma away, you don't know who you are. So like, like I found, like, I think I'm going to do like one session a month because I don't want to rush that process. Because
Yeah.
as I destroy the traumas that have made me who I am, I also need to add like new pieces to my life, like new things to myself and my identity. So it's like
Yeah.
a erasure process and like a little bit of growth and then like a
Yeah.
little bit of that. And yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
definitely think that, yeah, like people should take it slow,
Yeah.
especially if
It's
they have like a
intense.
personality disorder. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So once a month, that sounds quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was doing it twice a week at one point. It was,
Oh,
yeah, it was
I don't
crazy.
know. Damn, like that's serious. I mean, the night after I did it, the first time I couldn't sleep at all. Like there was
Yeah.
just like intense, like I don't know what it was, like anxiety or just like whatever was like leaving my body.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a suicide attempt, and right after my psychiatrist, Dr. Amen, was like, right, I'm getting you into EMDR twice a week. And it did work because it did get me out of that. I mean, I was on Wellbutrin as well, the highest one you could get, and EMDR twice a week. And I feel like I needed it, but
Yeah.
I'm at a point now where I don't need that anymore, thank God. But yeah,
Yeah. That must be a good feeling. Like,
it was,
yeah.
yeah, it is, but it was intense having to relive all those memories, but I feel like it yeah, it's no joke.
Yeah, and I like
But
really like admire your journey with that too, because I know you had a really difficult period where you
yeah,
had
it
that
was,
attempt and everything, and you just like you found your way out of that. Like
yeah,
I relate to that so much. I was like passively suicidal for a long time.
right.
And yeah, like I had to like literally like figure out how to just like release a bunch of stuff so I could like feel okay again and like enjoy life again.
Wow. When you
Yeah.
say passively suicidal, what does that mean? I've never heard that before.
Well, I've never like attempted suicide.
Right,
I've never like self-harmed or anything, but I will have
right,
like thoughts.
right.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
just never act on it. Yeah.
yeah. That's when it gets serious, when you start planning or thinking about it. Yeah,
Yeah. It's some
yeah.
tough stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been really amazing. This has been like one of my favorite ones. Seriously, I've
Oh
loved
my
this. This has been,
God.
yeah, this has been it was such a great interview. You should come back again another time because it was so good.
Oh my God. I feel the same way. Like this was amazing. Like listening to your, like the way you could relate to some of the stuff I said, it was like, wow.
Yeah, I totally did. Yeah. And I think it's going to be interesting for people to see that cross between autism and narcissism. I do. I think because that's why people have said
Gonna
that to
blow it out
me.
of the water.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
But yeah,
amazing.
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. No, and definitely, let's definitely do it again.
Absolutely.
That was great. Thank you so much,
Oh,
Tessa.
thank you.
Bye now.